Hello everyone, welcome to your detailed weather forecast for the first of possibly many storms to come in the next 1 to 2 to 3 weeks. Now the models are being really inconsistent with temperatures and what we're going to see when it comes to storms. But one area that is being pretty consistent with the cold temperatures is going to be in here, but it's also being consistent with the storm is actually about to unfold as we get into tonight, and then across the northeast, that'll be a little bit in 1 or 2 days for you. But right now we're focusing on the upper Midwest. We'll look at the Northeast too. But let's go and start with these winter weather alerts. And you can see in these purples we do have those winter weather advisories. This is where we're not expecting a ton of snow, but we are expecting some to come from the storm. So this is where we're not expecting the worst impacts from the storm. But actually in some of these parts we will see quite a bit, especially parts near in this western Michigan along the lakes. We could pick up quite a bit of snow possibly. But also in Chicago, we're not expecting a ton. So it kind of depends on your location. And as we get into these pinks, we have these winter storm warnings. This is where we're expecting the most significant snowfall to fall. And then we also do have that across parts of east central Iowa getting into northwest parts of Illinois. And you can see how sharp that cutoff is. We go from a winter storm warning to a winter weather advisory from one county and then nothing in the other county. So that cutoff of that red snow line is going to be pretty close, like all the storms are. And yeah, that's what we're looking at. And also we do have this blizzard warning where we could be seeing blizzard conditions. Now, remember, that's just because we're going to have really strong winds. This is actually we're not going to get a ton of snow in this area, but we are going to have that snow blowing around when this comes through and after it comes through. So that's why we have that blizzard warning. And it's not because we're getting a ton of snow, possibly. It's a lot. Well, not possibly. It's not because we're getting a bunch of snow. It's because the winds are going to be whipping around that snow that is already on the ground and is what's going to be falling on the ground. So that's why you have that blizzard warning there and nowhere else. But I do expect possibly for some of you blizzard conditions at times. We could get winds that are blizzard category, but it will not be considered a blizzard for many of you. So let's go ahead and take a look here. You can see right now there's not a ton going on. Let's go ahead and go over here. There's not a ton going on at all for many of you. We have some cold air in place. So let's go ahead and look right here. This is as we get into when everyone's starting to go to sleep tonight. You can see we have that possible snow moving from northeast Nebraska, maybe a mix as we move into southwest Minnesota. Also, we could see some ice in parts of Wisconsin to start this off. In that blue, we do have that snow. But as you can see, in parts of southwest Wisconsin, southeast, very extreme southeast parts of Minnesota, and northeast parts of, as we get into Iowa, it does have that freezing rain. You could get a quick glazing, so maybe a tenth of an inch of freezing rain, but nothing terrible there. But as you can see at this leading edge, we do have some more mixed precipitation, and the storm really isn't together as we get at this time for a lot of you. Now, this is when it does start to get together. You can see we have that low pressure to the south, and these are called isobars, these black lines, and they're equal lines of pressure. So the closer they get, the more wind you're going to have. So that's what we're going to be looking at as we do see these blizzard conditions for some of you, especially in that blizzard warning. Now you can see we still do have some mix or freezing rain for some of you in those pinks. Getting into the purples, it's more of a sleet mixture. And then you can see on this back side, we do have a band of snow extending all the way from parts of northern Michigan through Wisconsin, through southeast Minnesota, getting into northwest parts of Iowa, getting into southeast parts of Nebraska. So let's continue on. Here we are at this is starting around 10 a.m. tomorrow, and you can see we do have that band of snow for many of you as we get into central and eastern Iowa, getting into most of Wisconsin and then northern Michigan too. And you can see we do have this rain snow line here, and then we have, of course, some rain on the eastern and southern side of that. You can see Chicago maybe getting on a few rain showers that could have sleet mixed in, possibly, or maybe just some freezing drizzle for some of you. And you can see over here, we do have that snow as we continue on into early tomorrow afternoon. You can see we have that across a lot of Wisconsin, getting into eastern Iowa, northwest parts of Illinois, and then northern Michigan. You can see this is where we were looking at that cutoff for those winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories for a lot of you, because right here we're expecting mostly rain. You can see maybe some more sustained rain and maybe some sleet mixing into some of you in Chicago as we continue to go on. but we do expect that to change over to all snow for a brief period of time. And you can see here we are when it does possibly change over. And we also do have that snow in parts of western Michigan, northern Michigan, getting into a lot of Wisconsin still falling, eastern Iowa still falling, and then northern Illinois we have some falling. Also, we do see a changeover in parts of northern Indiana. We're not expecting the most here, but we could have that rain to snow for you, but I think we'll have a little bit more of a mix once we get into there. So we'll have to watch here because this is definitely going to be, it's more uncertain as we get into parts of northern Ohio and northern Indiana. The models are really disagreeing on what's going to happen, but you can see this specific model, which is pretty reliable, does show some for you in northern Indiana and parts of northwest Ohio. And then by the time we're at your dinner time tomorrow, you can see we do have that band of snow and that blue. And then on the leading edge, we still do have some rain for some of you. And as we continue to go on throughout tomorrow, this is getting to when you're starting to go to sleep. You can see we have this band of snow continuing to move. We're still getting some of that snow into eastern Wisconsin, maybe some snow showers in northern Illinois. And then we have that snow right here, possibly in parts of northern Ohio and northern Indiana. And then we have all of Michigan in that snow, most likely. So all of Michigan will be in the snow. This is a pretty good snow for you in Michigan. But the models are kind of inconsistent, too, with southeast Michigan. So we'll have to continue to watch towards Detroit because some models have been pretty inconsistent. But as you can see, as we get into Ohio, we're expecting you to change back to snow possibly. So we're going to have to continue to watch that because it's possible and pretty likely that we could go from that snow back to the rain, which could definitely cut down on some of your totals. As you can see, we do have that snow still in a lot of Michigan. Getting into Canada, we have that falling. And then we have that rain in Ohio, and then that continues to move to the northeast. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at your total accumulated snowfall. I do recommend going to your local meteorologist if you live in these areas. Go look at their forecast because obviously this isn't going to be as accurate because we're going off one model. I actually haven't, drew a forecast and they have. So if you live in these areas, go to your local meteorologist. Now, I do think this is pretty spot on for a lot of you. Remember, this is one specific model, so you got to remember that I can't really put them all together because there is a thing that you can buy for that, but I just don't have that. But as you can see, here's what we're looking at for storm totals. Now, on the backside, we could get some lake effect snow in parts of western Michigan, which could up your totals. But as you can see, that's what we're actually looking at for the storm totals, but behind we could see some lake effects. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that lake effect in. But remember, your storm, the direct storm, isn't going to bring this much in parts of western Michigan. The lakes could bring some extra snow in too. So let's go and take a look at your total snow accumulation. And this is actually the models ratio. So let's go ahead and look at this. So you can see down here it says 10-to-1 ratio. So that pretty much means that 10 inches of snow equals 1 inch of liquid. Now that is never... It's kind of rare that you get that, you get the 10-to-1 ratio. Usually you're too warm, so you could go up to the 7 inches of snow equals 1 inch of liquid, or 5-to-1 if you get warmer, or if you get colder, that can go up 12-to-1, 15-to-1. Now this specific model makes its own ratio. So pretty much what it's saying is, well, based off of your temperatures and your conditions, this is what I think you're going to get. So this all could not stick, but the ground is really cold here, so I do expect it to stick pretty quickly. But yeah, let's go take a look here. So that kind of explains to you what's going on. But you can see our biggest totals are going to be in here, especially parts of northern Michigan, where we could pick up 8 to 12 inches, possibly even more. And then you can see as we get into this purple, that's more of like a 5 to 8 inches. And that is also parts of western Michigan, and the lakes are going to be helping you out there. And then once we get into parts of western Iowa, getting into eastern Nebraska, it has 1 to 3 inches for you, and then maybe a little band of 1 to 3 inches along parts of southeast Minnesota. But I do think it's more reliable down here in that 2 to 4 inches. I think you should have way better confidence you're going to get something there. And then you can see across a bunch of eastern Michigan, 3 to 5 inches. But once you get closer to the coastline of the lakes across eastern Wisconsin, we may not get as much, maybe up to 1 inch for some of you. So we're going to have to be watching there because the same thing does happen down in Chicago, where we could get a dusting to 1 or 2 inches. But the more north and west you go, the higher totals are going to be. And then you can see across parts of southeast Michigan, it's giving you about 2 to 4 inches, maybe some more as you get closer to Detroit. But this has been a kind of an inconsistent area. The models yesterday weren't showing this much. They were showing 1 to 2 inches, so it has bumped up a little bit. It could go back down, but I do think you could get some snow there too. Then you can see across northern Indiana and northwest Ohio, it's showing 1 to 2, maybe 3 inches for some of you. Remember, especially in parts of Ohio, that it's going to change back to rain. I do think it could happen in Indiana too, but I think Indiana, more on the backside, I don't think we're going to change to rain as bad. Oh gosh, as bad. But yeah, that's what we're looking at. And you can see in this area, don't expect much here at all. This is just like a trace, if you were wondering, maybe a dusting for some of you, but that's like the same thing. But you can see maybe an inch right here. And I'm just showing you like what the colored shades mean. That there's a thing down here that does show you, but some of you might not be able to see that. But yeah, that's what we're looking at for some of these totals. That's a pretty good rundown. And if you're wondering, remember we did see that freezing rain ahead of this. So let's go and take a look at freezing rain. I don't think we're going to see a ton at all, but you can see where we do get it to start out. You can see maybe this model has you getting up to 1/10 of an inch in parts of Wisconsin. You can see here in those pinks, it's up to 1/10 of an inch. Other than that, don't expect, if you're in those gray areas, don't even worry about this ice. But you could maybe, this model has getting up to maybe 0.15 inches of ice. That's really not that bad. That's like glazing to 1/10 of an inch. So nothing bad to worry about there. Just on the leading edge, we could get a little bit of ice, but then it changes over to snow and you don't really got to worry about that freezing rain to fall. So yeah, that's what we're looking at there. I'm not too concerned about that, that ice situation, but I do think we could get quite a bit of snow. This is more of a mediocre storm than it is anything, so it's nothing big for many of you. So let's go ahead and look into the Northeast. The Northeast is pretty complicated. I do think this is going to be, it's most likely going to be west of the I-95 corridor, so this is more of an interior Northeast storm. But you can see this model does have that snow falling for you in North Ohio, and it also does have snow for eastern Michigan. So this model is actually agreeing on certain parts of that, and you can see this model specifically doesn't have you changing back over to rain in parts of Ohio. So remember, you could stay all snow in Ohio, in northern Ohio. We're just going to have to see because the models are being kind of inconsistent with that, but they have a trended snow area, that's what I will tell you. But you can see we do get that main swath of snow to start to move in. As we get into Thursday night, you can see possibly some snow in parts of northern Pennsylvania. And then once we get to the higher elevations of the Appalachians, you can see we have that snow. Other than that, in the lower elevations, or just a lot of West Virginia, we're expecting mainly rain. And then you can see over here we do have that snow in parts of southwestern parts of New York. Maybe a little bit of a mix at the beginning. And then you can see as we continue to move this on, once we get towards the Allentown area, Pennsylvania, getting into parts of northern Jersey, we could have some snow moving in. And then we have that more snow starting to come into parts of eastern New York State, getting it into Vermont and New Hampshire. But you can see along the coastline, getting in really the I-95 corridor from Philadelphia to New York City to D.C. all the way up to Boston, we're expecting rain. We're not expecting snow at all. Maybe a few snowflakes mixing in, possibly, but I wouldn't count on that. So as you can see, here we are as we get into early tomorrow, early Friday afternoon, and we do have that snow moving into possibly western Connecticut, getting into northwest Massachusetts, getting into Vermont and New Hampshire, starting to move into Maine. You can see this does have Boston in that rain, but maybe west of you, maybe some snow moving in, but still not expecting a ton. And then it still has New York City in that rain. As we continue this to go on, you can see it even changes parts of Massachusetts that were showing possibly snow, could change back over to some rain showers. We're not expecting a ton of snow from this, and it's going to be a pretty tricky forecast. So you can see as we get in near coastal Maine, we're even changing, you're going to be in rain too. But once we get into more northern Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, this is where we do think you have a pretty good chance of getting into those heavier snows. But this is a pretty fast moving and not a very significant system. And you can see we still do have that rain along the Maine coast and then that snow as we get into parts of northern Maine. And then as we continue this on, it finally does start to move out, and that's what we're looking at there. So I'm about to show you what the models are saying for that snow, but right here I would say you will add on more in this parts of Maine. You could get pick up a little bit more in northeast Maine, but you can see in southeast Maine it's actually showing some pretty heavy rain too. So that's what we're looking at there. So I'm going to show you what it's saying. I guess I'll show you the 10-to-1 ratio. Since there's a lot of snow on the ground here, whatever falls will probably stick pretty soon, pretty quickly. But if we're to let's go ahead and take a look at this. I will show you right over here. This is showing that 3 to 5 for southeast Michigan, so they're agreeing on that front. But you can see it's adding a little bit more in northern Indiana and northwest Ohio, and it's showing more snow as we get into these areas than the other model is. So we're gonna have to keep a look on that, what it's saying. But I'd say the biggest uncertainty is really northern Ohio, and in the northeast, things are really going to change. This looks really complicated. So as you can see, over here, maybe 1 to 2, maybe 3 inches in some spots. And then, as you can see in those purples, in those higher elevations, maybe 3 to 5 inches. And then you can see we have more in elevations, maybe 5 to 10 inches in the highest elevations over here near upstate New York. And then along the mountains of Vermont in those highest elevations, same thing, maybe 5 to 8 inches, maybe more. And then the same thing in parts of those mountains of New Hampshire, 5 to 10 inches. And then over here in the parts of the highest terrain of Maine, maybe picking up a foot or more. And then the same over here in this part of Maine. So it's really elevation dependent for many of you, but the lower elevations could pick up a little bit of snow. And you can see it's the same over here as we get into parts of mountainous West Virginia, where we could pick up to 10 inches in some parts. So we're really going to be watching that. But you can see the highest elevations, we are expecting you to pick up some good snow. That may be 1 to 2 to 3 inches in this main area of that blue. And then once we get over towards Allentown, maybe up to 1 inch, maybe 2. But you can see the Philadelphia area, we're not expecting anything for you. New York City, we're not expecting anything. Boston, we're not expecting anything. And you can see maybe a dusting over here in the parts of these areas. This model says, I'd say dusting to 1 inch. And then over here, this is where I do think we could pick up some better snow, especially in here. This is more of a 3 to 5 inches. And then you can see once we get up into parts of Maine, really this area, widespread, maybe dusting to 3 inches. But as we get into northern Maine, it's 1 to 3 inches. And this higher terrain, obviously, we're getting more. And then coastal Maine, we're expecting just rain for a lot of you, maybe a trace as you get a little bit off the coast. So as you can see, this is a really elevation dependent storm as we get to the northeast. Way better chances we get into the Great Lakes and the upper Midwest for that snow, but this could drop a little bit of snow for some of you as we get into parts of central and northern and parts of eastern Pennsylvania, not Philadelphia, but as you go more northwest in Allentown. And then could drop some pretty good snows in parts of eastern New York, not New York City. And as we get into Vermont and New Hampshire, also getting up in northern Maine. I also do think there's going to be more here, but remember this model doesn't go out far enough. So that's what we're looking at. It is a pretty complicated forecast for the northeast. If you're not in higher elevations, don't expect a lot from this. If you're in the major cities like DC, as we get into Philadelphia, Baltimore, also as we get into parts of, as we get to New York City and then getting into Boston, don't expect anything from this. Expect rain if you get any precipitation. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. I hope y'all did enjoy today's video. This isn't a crazy system, but the more west you is, the more west you are, the better the system is going to be as we get into the Great Lakes region. But yeah, hope y'all did enjoy. I'll see you guys in the next one. This pattern looking ahead is very confusing, but hopefully we'll be able to iron out the details as we go on.